9.
The most significant era of global peace in human history contains a fatal flaw. It provides the exact fuel required for the greatest era of war. That peace, engineered by the figure known as the Antichrist, creates a rigid system of control that only requires a single fissure to collapse entirely. To cement his authority, he moves to refurbish Solomon's Temple Mount, a site currently occupied by the Muslim shrine of Omar. This act requires the direct alteration or replacement of one of the most contested religious sites on Earth. This maneuver acts as the inevitable flashpoint. The attempt to engineer a permanent religious center provokes the very rebellions that will shatter his false peace. The architect's effort to dominate the most sensitive geography in the world provides the spark that ignites global insurrection. The collapse of that control begins with the breaking of the second seal, detailed in Revelation chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. The text describes the second living creature, a cherubim, issuing a single authoritative command: "Come." The text carefully notes that it was granted to the writer to take peace from the earth. That passive phrasing requires an active grantor. It implies a higher power actively giving permission for the violence to occur. This points directly to the theological concept of divine restraint. Divine restraint is the premise that God places invisible, active limits on human depravity to maintain basic social order. The breaking of the second seal is the intentional removal of these limits, allowing mankind's latent capacity for violence to run completely unchecked. The brief window of global tranquility evaporates. Nation rises against nation and kingdom against kingdom, fracturing the alliances that held the early tribulation period together. The atmosphere shifts from geopolitical tension and rumors of wars into active daily combat. Violence becomes the baseline condition of human interaction. Without that external restraint holding human nature in check, the autocrat's manufactured treaty fails as the rate of rebellion exceeds his capacity for central suppression. The visual manifestation of this shift is the emergence of the rider on a red horse. The specific crimson color denotes blood. It signifies ubiquitous, messy carnage, rather than the organized, strategic conquests associated with traditional empires. The rider embodies a pervasive force of violence, infecting global populations simultaneously, acting as a collective impulse rather than a command from a single human general. The rider's explicit mandate is to ensure that men slay one another. The violence occurs on an intimate, person-to-person scale. Under the conditions of the second seal, the traditional distinction between a frontline combatant and an innocent civilian ceases to exist. To execute this mandate, the rider is given what the text calls a great sword. The original Greek text uses the specific word machaira. Machaira is the term for a short, stabbing sword. This diagram compares a traditional, long cavalry sword with the machaira. This compact blade forces close-quarters combat. Roman soldiers carried it for tight infantry engagements, and assassins favored it because it could be easily concealed for unexpected close-range attacks. Global war splinters into localized anarchy. Civil society breaks down as neighbors turn on neighbors, assassinations become routine, and riots tear through once peaceful streets. This micro-level violence operates like a cancer. It infiltrates every city block, village, and living room, killing the innocent and the guilty with equal measure. This collapse into localized slaughter stems directly from the failure of the autocrat's initial forced peace accords. The descriptor "great" refers to the sword's reach, signifying violence that penetrates every city and home regardless of the blade's physical size. Without the rule of law, the slaughter spreads through neighborhoods like a cancer, sparing neither villains nor the innocent. The machaira represents the complete democratization of carnage. The weapon is no longer confined to the military. It is in the hands of everyone. Faced with this collapse, the chief architect of the earlier peace accords must pivot immediately. To preserve his authority, the man of peace becomes a man of war. His initial power base, a regional confederacy, begins to fracture as local leaders and populations openly rebel against his dominance. This flowchart maps his strategic reaction: A central autocratic authority responds to regional uprisings with an aggressive military crackdown, but attempting to enforce a manufactured peace through total war creates a destructive feedback loop. The extreme force crushing rival factions to consolidate his control over the globe. As his official armies attempt to suppress this decentralized worldwide uprising, entire cities and rural villages are transformed into active combat zones. The autocratic state itself acts as the primary accelerant of the second seal. It wields the sword to burn down the very world it initially sought to unify. The false stability of the first seal was a pressurized prelude. The treaties and accords were temporary constraints, delaying an inevitable eruption of violence. The removal of divine restraint forces humanity to confront its own uninhibited baseline. Without an external moral or metaphysical barrier, society defaults to brutal self-interest. The result is a geopolitical landscape entirely devoid of front lines. Assassinations, riots, genocides, and assaults occur continuously, making slaughter a daily common occurrence. The Red Rider's specific mission, to definitively take peace from the earth, achieves absolute saturation. The calculus of the second seal demonstrates a bleak reality. Any global peace structured by human autocracy rather than divine order eventually devolves. The early phase of the second seal is characterized by the autocrat crushing political enemies and using his military to enforce a state of law and order. This reliance on kinetic force permanently ends the era of his diplomatic persona, revealing the true nature of his autocratic government. The man who brought peace to the Middle East is eventually forced by his own need for power to become the primary instigator of its destruction.
9.